All right, welcome back to another podcast of Johanna Banana. Okay, we're going to just discuss briefly our last podcast about my fellow pothead friend, my ex pothead friend. I'm still torn about this a little bit, Aiden, because I do feel like I'm a very emotionally driven person. I do feel like I kind of was a little bit of a bitch there. What do you think? Do you think I was a bitch at the end?
With what?
With my fellow pothead friend, just like cutting her off after she didn't do our makeup. She had us buy all this. If she hadn't have had us buy all this makeup, I think that was like the icing on the cake. If she hadn't have us buy all this makeup, if we hadn't have like planned this for like weeks and then like the day before she canceled, maybe I wouldn't have been such a cold-hearted bitch to her. Because I fucking was. I will own my bitchness, and I was a cold-hearted fucking bitch to her. But I had it with her. I think I had just lost it with her, and it just pissed the fuck out of me. But still to this day, I'm feeling a little bit guilty because she was in a car accident. She did almost die. And then I was a lot of people turned their backs on her. And then I was one of them as well. And so I feel a little bit guilty about that, but I was pretty fucked up over my dad too.
Yeah.
Like I did end the story with a bunch of two fucked up women. That's what I called it. I called it two fucked up women. What would you say? That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm on the fence about it, but at the same token, I'm glad she's out of my life. So it's like, And here's another thing. And this is me being a cold-hearted fucking bitch. Okay. So here's when I don't have sympathy for somebody. And this is probably from my stepmother. We are going to get into my stepmother later on as I talk about my childhood. But when I feel like they brought it upon themselves, that's when I don't feel bad. Okay. She got in the car accident because she was high off her fucking ass. Okay. Yeah. Just like my close call, the guy that we almost let him move in with me. Yeah. I felt a bit like a cold-hearted bitch because I wasn't there for him after he got fired. But I feel like, honey, you made that bed. Lay in it. That's where I have no sympathy. And I get that, I think, from my stepmother, and we will get into that. But when I feel like they made it themselves, that they're the sole reason as to why they are in this position, just like me, I'm fucking pissed that I'm in $20,000 credit card debt, but I fucking did it to myself. Therefore, I have to work 7 days a week. That's where I just don't feel sorry for people. What do you think? Do you think that when people made it upon themselves is when you kind of don't feel sorry for them in a way?
I mean, that's when it's kind of their responsibility to get back up from it.
Yeah, like I'm doing. Working 7 days a week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm making it. Yeah, me. And if you guys are ever in credit card debt, please contact a debt relief program. It's wonderful, and that's what I'm doing right now. And I'm paying off my credit card debt. But you have to own your shit. And I wouldn't have been in this debt, but I was a fucking diva, and I couldn't deal with, the closeted gay man over at Pamper Paws. So there I am. Anyways. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. The reason why my kid is here, too, is I'm still learning how to do this on my own. Yes, I know. I am. But I got it down now. And so I will now continue. Thank you, Aiden. I just kind of had to vent because I guess I still feel a little bit guilty about not being as sympathetic as I think I would be if they didn't have a role to play in that. Yeah. Anyways, Thank you, Aiden. I know he just sits there and I just vent. Okay, all right. So now let's get into. I'm gonna start in the beginning. We all know when Johanna Banana YouTube videos and stuff that I would do, I started in the beginning of my love life, but I never really got into the beginning of my life. Okay, and maybe this is why I'm a cold-hearted bitch at times. We're all bitchy from some time or another. We all are. It's all part of us. Anyways, okay. So we're gonna start in the beginning. Okay, so I'm going to tell a story about a young man, and I'm trying to think when this was, probably in the 60s, I would say. I wish I had a timeline of this. Okay, so in the 60s, my father was in the Peace Corps. Okay, he decided to go to the Peace Corps. This was after he graduated from U of A. Okay, and my dad, he majored in Latin American studies and something else. I will talk about my dad. One thing about my dad was fully bilingual. My grandfather worked for mining companies in Mexico and Peru. So my dad did not live a majority of his life in the US, okay? He did, I think, in high school, maybe? No, I don't remember. High school, I'm not sure. College, for sure. But, this is the really hilarious thing about my dad. My dad was this tall, gringo-looking guy. He had this ruddy Irish complexion, and he totally didn't even look like this guy that knew all about Latin America, spoke fluent Spanish, understood the culture, everything, right? Opposite of me, okay? I'm in the other boat where I look the part. I do for the most part. I will get into how some people are shocked that I'm Latin to begin with, but that's another story. But I don't have the language. I don't know the culture. I don't know any of that. And it's so funny that both of my dad and my aunt, his older sister, looked like two white people that were more Latin than I will ever be. I know, it's interesting. So he was in the Peace Corps. Now, while he was in the Peace Corps is when he met this woman. She was a Colombian woman, and he met her there in the Peace Corps. They decided to get married. Yep, they got married. And then my dad went, when my dad was in the Peace Corps, this is when he got, and this is what all priests, maybe pastors say this too. I don't know. This is what all clergymen say. And I used to think this was funny because some people would go to my dad and say, I have the calling. And I'm thinking, yeah, Dad, I think they called the wrong number. Okay. So when you get, all of a sudden you get what's called the calling. It's some sort of religious, I'm not very religious, okay, but for people that are, my dad was very religious. He got some sort of calling to become a priest, okay, also known as a pastor. But the reason why, the difference between a priest and a pastor, I will tell this to you right now. A priest has to go to seminary, okay? First of all, a priest has to have a master's degree and then has to go to seminary. Seminary includes, I think, 3 to 4 years of seminary, and that includes all the religious, teachings and whatnot. My dad even got to read some of the things, some of the scriptures that didn't make it into the Bible. I thought that was cool when I was a kid, because me, I didn't take the Bible seriously at all. And then you have to do, and this really made an impact on me. Then my dad had to do pastoral training. So he had to work at a hospital, at a burn victims hospital. He got to see burned people. He said that was the hardest thing he ever had to do. You also have to do counseling training. It's very, very extensive. It's very different from a lot of the Protestant churches, like the Baptists. I'm trying to think. Baptists, born agains. They're very much, it's in their bloodline. You've heard it. My daddy was a preacher. Now I'm preaching. Okay. Most of these people never went to college. Okay. So that's the difference between a priest and a pastor. Okay. So my dad was considered a priest, even though in the Episcopal Church, it's very much like the Catholic Church, but we're called Catholic Light because we didn't have a lot of the same rules, i.e. the clergy can marry, the clergy can have children. But our service, we have communion every Sunday, and any Catholic could walk into an Episcopal church and feel at home. Okay, that's where it's a very, very we're a lot closer to our Catholics than we are to more of the Protestant churches. I also call them the Bible thumpers, the people that take the Bible literally. We're very different from that. We have a little bit of that because clergy can get married. Clergy can have kids. That's where we straddle both worlds is what we do. We're called in the middle or the middle ground. Anyways, but my dad was in the Peace Corps. That is when he got the calling for that. And he had met this Colombian woman. They married in Colombia. Yeah, they married in Colombia. I couldn't find their wedding picture. It's so simple and plain, but I couldn't find their wedding picture. But they got married in Colombia. Okay, then my dad went into seminary, and the seminary that he chose, knowing my dad and his feeling so comfortable in Latin America, he chose Peru. No, I'm sorry, not Peru. Puerto Rico. That's right. Sorry. Puerto Rico. And let me tell you something. This is how old my dad is. And this is hilarious. I used to think this was so hilarious. I used to tell everybody this. When my dad was in seminary, there was only one movie that was in English playing in the movie theater. Okay. All the rest were like in Spanish, which, was fine. My dad was bilingual, so it didn't matter. But he wanted to see this movie. He wanted to see this movie because it was a huge splash and they made a big deal about it. Guess what he saw? And he saw it like 2 or 3 times. He loved it so much. The Sound of Music. Yes, that should tell you how freaking long ago it was that my dad was in Puerto Rico in seminary, because The Sound of Music was on the big screen. And wasn't that like in the 60s, guys? I want to say something like that. Anyways, okay. So then I don't know when this happened. I think this happened after my dad graduated from seminary. He ended up going to a church. He got chosen to be, you're kind of like, I don't know what you want to, you're like, you start out as what's called a deacon before you become an actual priest. So he was working at this one church in Colombia, in Medellin. Yes, my dad was in Colombia during the Medellin cartel. Okay, this is 60s and 70s. I know, it was really scary times. Yes. And so he was working at this Episcopal church. There was an English-speaking Episcopal church. There were a few of them, and that's where he was working. Well, at some point, and I don't know when this happened, the woman that he married ended up having a nervous breakdown, like a psychotic break, right? And my dad was like, oh my God, what is going on here? And this is just right after they got married and everything. And he didn't know what was going on. Well, it turns out, and this is something that I have heard about Latin Americans or Latinos or Latin people. I don't know if this is the case for everybody, but they kind of, and I can't say because we're pretty bad in our country too, they look down on mental illness. So they try to hide mental illness, okay? So what happened was, the woman that he married, her name was Mercy, she ended up having schizophrenia. Paranoid schizophrenia was her actual diagnosis. The only thing is it was news to my dad. Yes, I know, right? Can you imagine marrying somebody? This is the love of your life. You have everything planned out. You want to have children. My dad couldn't wait to be a dad, and all of this stuff. And then what? You've had schizophrenia this entire time? Yeah, I know. I don't know how my dad took the news. My aunt, because she's very protective of my dad, was less than thrilled that the family had kept this as a secret, but they had. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia at the time when schizophrenia does normally hit people, and that's your teen years. So this was not her first psychotic break. This was the first psychotic break that my father was aware of. Okay, so now he realizes that the great love of his life, and he was madly in love with this woman, he was. When my dad passed away, we found some love letters, not that I could read them because they were in Spanish, all to her in Spanish. Okay, he was very much in love with her. And my dad, always wanted to make things work. My dad was very much a don't rock the boat, try to make things work. And so he was like, okay, they talked about it. It turned out that schizophrenia ran rampant in her family, okay? She was one of 7 children, and like 5 out of the 7 girls, there was 1 boy, but 5 out of the 7 kids all had schizophrenia of some sort. Yeah, and I'm talking about different degrees. Hers was very severe. She had another sister that was very severe as well. Anyways, I'm going to get my drink. Hold on. I'm sorry. I've been battling this stupid cough. Okay, so this now changes things for my dad, right? Because he wanted to be a dad, but he also knew that schizophrenia ran rampant on her side of the family. And together, I don't know how this happened, but together they decided the best thing was to adopt. Yes, was to adopt. Now, they wanted a baby. Yeah, they wanted to adopt a baby. Well, the thing is, a lot of people, if they do turn to adoption, they all want babies. And that's really hard. And so what happened was my dad and I just call her my adopted mother. She wasn't a big part of my life, and we'll get into that later. Okay, so the problem was they had to be on a 10-year waiting list. Yeah, they waited 10 years. They were on a wait list. 10 years. They were married for 10 years before they got the phone call. And I want to say it was actually because we were so tied with the Catholic Church and whatnot. I think it was a Catholic orphanage that I went to. I'm not sure what orphanage that I went to, but they got the call that there was a 3-week-old baby that needed a home, was ready for adoption. And it was like, this is it. Everybody was so excited. I remember my aunt does a lot of needlepoint, and she needle pointed a pillow, welcome to me. And it was probably the most exciting thing ever for my dad and my adopted mother. Hopefully this is going to work. I don't have Aiden, back on my Johanna Banana episodes. Aiden would be able to put in a picture at this moment, but I don't know how to edit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the first picture my adopted parents ever received of me. Let's see if it'll show. I don't know if it will show. I'm going to try. I don't know with the glare. Yeah, I can see it. Okay, that means you guys can see it, right? Okay, so look at me. There I am, little baby Johanna Banana. I know, yes, okay, and here I am. I was born in the capital of Colombia. It's Bogota. Yeah, Bogota. And it was 1978. Yep, 1978. And my dad and my adopted mother had been married for 10 years, and they finally got the call. And the one thing that my dad couldn't believe, he told me this, the one thing that my dad could not believe when he first brought me home was the fact that I slept through the night. Yeah, here's my dad. And this just blew me away because most of the men in my life could care less about being a dad. They like making the baby, but then after that, peace out. But my dad was a hands-on dad, not what I call the sperm donor dad, and could not wait. He had been on a waiting list for 10 years. He had read all these baby books and everything. So he was so prepared, right? He was prepared to get up in the middle of the night to do my night feedings and whatnot, right? Well, he used to tell me, he says, I don't know what those nuns did to you, but you slept through the whole night just fine. Yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy? So my dad never really had to get up with me. Isn't that funny? Yeah. And then when he told me that, when I'm being as a mom myself, well, let me tell you something. For the first 6 months, Ada did not sleep through the night. I still remember it like clockwork, 3 a.m. Diaper change, a bottle, go back to bed. And so, it's incredible that I did sleep through the night. I did think it was really sweet that my dad had read every one of these baby books and everything. And so, anyways, so it's 1978. I'm in Bogota, Colombia, living it up. And I'll show you another picture. Here's another picture of me as a baby. I'm trying to see. Yeah, these are all black and white, unfortunately, because, well, I'm old. Okay, here's another picture of me. I was such a cute baby. I was, yeah. And, so anyways, at this point, my dad is a priest, and he's still at the same church, but it's getting really bad in Colombia. It's getting very, very dangerous because the Medellin drug cartel is very prevalent there. My dad told me stories of some of his parishioners being kidnapped, held for ransom. My dad was in a hostage situation. I don't know exactly all the details with that, but my dad was held hostage at some point in Colombia too by the drug lords. So it got to the point where my dad was like, we need to go back to the States. And so he decided, and I will give a warning to all you Trump supporters out there, I did come to this country illegally. Yeah, that's right, bitches, I did. So what happened was, my dad decided to leave, and I'm trying to think, I was like a year maybe? I don't even think I was a year. He was a nervous wreck because he didn't have any paperwork. The other thing that my dad said that really made him really nerve-wracking, and I think that's the reason why they had to wait until I was a year old, and I had no idea. I don't know if this is still the case, but God, this my heart broke when my dad told me this. Okay. So when you adopt, and I don't know if this is the case anymore, I don't know if this is just Colombia, I don't know. But when you adopt a child, the biological parents have up to 1 year to contest it and get their child back. So my dad said that entire year he was on pins and needles thinking that someone was going to take me away from him. Isn't that sad? I don't know if I could do that. I don't know how, oh my gosh, like even think, because I'm a parent now, and just thinking about having a child taken from you, that just breaks my heart, it really, really does. So that was hard. So I think once they were over that, then we were able to come to the States but I came to the States, people, I will tell you, without any documentation. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Maybe it was 1980 when I came to the States, 79, 80, something like that. No, 79, because I was born in 78. Okay, 79 is when I came to the U.S. At like a year old I was an undocumented immigrant. I know. Thank the fucking Lord Jesus that old Trumpster wasn't our president then. Yeah, I know. My dad was really nervous about that. He really was. Okay, so the first place when we first moved to the U.S., we moved to the San Francisco Bay Area. Okay, in Berkeley, California, there is a huge, I don't know what it's called, a theological institute. I don't know. It's all of these religious people. And it's like a mecca, of Episcopalians and all this stuff. So we went there because I think he was trying to get a job as a priest in one of these churches in the San Francisco Bay Area. Okay, so we went there. Now, my dad was also trying to get his PhD. Okay, my dad was a true academic. My aunt often says he would have been like a college professor if he hadn't have chose the priesthood. As he loved learning. He loved going to school. He's like I said, the reason I got involved with fucking pervert teacher is because pervert teacher said the same exact thing my father said, which was, if I could just pay to be a student, I would just be a student. Somebody who fucking hated school like myself, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But I get it because people think I'm crazy for working 7 days a week, but, I do love working. So anyways, so we went to the Bay Area and my adopted mother, Mercy, was with us and everything. But here's the thing, okay? I cannot believe my forefather. Okay, here is the thing. I'm like a year old, right? And moving to the U.S., even though my adopted mother did speak English, that's kind of the really sad thing, and it really shows how we are as a country. Most people from other countries, they're required to learn English. Not us. We're spoiled little rats. We never learn anybody else's language. It's really, really sad. Anyways, so she did speak English, but it was a huge culture shock. It was a huge culture shock to my dad, let me tell you, because he hadn't been in the U.S. in 15 years. And here he is in Berkeley, California, and this is like 1979. And in Latin America, they kind of progressed slower, the women. So get this. I could not freaking believe this. My dad was surprised to see women wearing jeans out in public. Yeah. Because in Colombia, it was still like the 1950s and women wore dresses and skirts. Isn't that funny? So that was kind of a shock to him, going from this like conservative country to like hippieville all of a sudden was just like he had a little bit of culture shock. But he didn't have as much culture shock as my adopted mother did because she had never lived in the US and she missed her family and all of that. So she was having a lot of psychotic episodes. I don't know how my dad did this. He would come home from school or from work because, he was trying to get his PhD. So he would come home from, his postgraduate studies and we would be gone. Because the thing about paranoid schizophrenia is you think like a phone call or something in the newspaper, everything is like a big puzzle and you're always having to stay like one step ahead. So she thought people were after us. So she would take me. My dad would have to drive around Berkeley, California, looking for us. It was really scary. I do remember, this is what scared me. I remember as I got older, we would visit her in these mental hospitals. And let me tell you something. Mental hospitals are no fucking joke, people. They're not. They're very, very scary, especially to a toddler. I just remember hiding behind my dad. I remember telling my dad, or thinking, I thought, this is what I thought at the ripe old age of 2 or 3. I thought that the hospital was making my mom sick. Yeah, I know, because I didn't understand it. So I thought, why is she going to this place, Dad, that's making her sick? Like the hospital, bad. I thought hospitals were bad. I didn't know they were there to help you because they were so damn scary. They really were. Okay, so at this point, my dad, he had to, unfortunately, and this still breaks my heart to this day, he was like 1 credit away of getting his PhD when my adopted mother had a major psychotic break. And the best, and I was, and he was really worried about me. I guess I found out just recently, about 3 or 4 years ago, he called my aunt and he says, I'm going to have to send Mercy back. She's going to have to be institutionalized. That's what one of the people said. Her schizophrenia was so severe that she's going to have to be institutionalized. She's going to have to go back to Colombia. Because the sad thing is, nobody can afford mental hospitals here in the US. I mean, that's why mental illness is like through the roof. That's why drug abuse is through the roof, because a lot of people that have schizophrenia and don't know it, they'll just take drugs to suppress the voices and the visions and the things like that. So she had to go back to Colombia. Yeah. So I have no memory of her leaving, but this is what my dad told me later on. My dad said when we took her to the airport, I gave her a hug, and then, and this kind of breaks my heart because I'm a mom and I think about Aiden too, but I didn't know at the time, and I didn't cry, I didn't have any emotions, nothing. My dad said I just watched her get on the plane. Yeah, I watched her get on the plane. I was 3 years old, and she had to go back to Colombia to be in a mental institution. And let me tell you, about 6-7 years ago, she passed away in that mental institution. It's so sad that she was hospitalized ever since then. It breaks my heart. But the weird thing is, and what bothered my dad the most, was the fact that I just show no emotion. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't show any emotion, but I showed no emotion at that time. And I think that did have an effect on me. I mean, you can't say that it didn't. That's why I think that it has come out in in other ways. I always say, even if you don't think it's affecting you, it is. You know, it will just come out in other ways and come out later down the road and whatnot. So here I am, 3 years old. Now, I also need to tell you that my dad, because he was on this waiting list and all this stuff, and my dad was 37 when he adopted me. Okay, so now I know, yeah, that's why I'm an orphan now. My dad was a much older parent, but he was on a waiting list for a decade. So he was 37 when he adopted me. And so here my dad is in his early 40s, a single parent. Yeah, he's a single parent of a 3-year-old. Yeah, crazy. So what he ended up having to do, he was like, what, 42? What he ended up having to do was he had to come to Arizona. Yes. Okay, so my family does have history in Arizona. We do. Not Phoenix, but Nogales, okay? My father's hometown is Nogales, Arizona, on the U.S. side, about 3 hours away. And so he had to move back in with his mom. Yeah, we moved in with my grandmother in this tiny little house that has been in my family for so many years. I think my great aunt was the one that bought the house for my grandmother. So my grandmother lived there. My dad and my aunt remember being there when they were teenagers. And now my aunt lives there to this day. Yeah, this house is so old. For all the guys and the people that are into electrical things, let me tell you how old this house is. When you blow a fuse, you have to screw the fuses back in. Yeah, that's how old this house is. I don't know how I'm going to sell this house when my aunt passes away. It's so ancient, but she loves it and it is her home. So my dad was broke. He wasn't making it in the Bay Area. He didn't get to finish school, 1 credit away from getting his PhD. And he was a single parent. So he had to move back into his mom's. Yeah, he did. And he had to take any kind of job. And so and I don't even know how my dad did this. I mean, I'm looking at myself, the things you do for your kids. You know, I was a phone sex operator, as you guys all know from another Johanna Banana podcast. I was, so I didn't have to put my kid in daycare. I am now working 7 days a week, not just because I'm in credit card debt, but it's also because I'm putting Aiden through school. So I can see it now. You make a lot of sacrifices for your kids, so I get it. So my dad in Nogales in the middle of summer. Now, granted, Nogales is about 15 degrees cooler, but still, guess what my dad was doing? I can't believe this. All his education, everything, he was tarring roofs. Yeah. I know, crazy, right? Tarring roofs, and I was and not happy about it at all. I feel really bad about this now. I would throw a total tantrum. That's why I think things were coming out in other ways. I fought with my grandmother a lot because she was older and cranky. She didn't want to take care of me. And so my dad put me in daycare. And I hated it. Scream bloody murder. I'd cry. I didn't want to be there. Oh, I will say at this point, I keep forgetting to tell the Trump supporters this. Okay, at this point, people, I now have a green card. Okay, I remember. I hated it too. I just was so pissed because when I got my green card when I was 3 years old, they were calling me Margarita. What the fuck? Yeah, even then, I'm like, what the fuck? My name is Johanna. This was before the banana. We can get to the banana part later. But yeah, no, and I was just pissed because I will tell you, my dad wanted to honor my biological parents. He said they will always be a part of you. So that was the name that my biological mother or father too. I don't know if the father was in the picture. I don't have any information, and my dad didn't have any information either when I was adopted. Back then, people just didn't keep records like that, so I have no idea. But So I did have a green card, but I was mad because they kept calling me Margarita. So my full name, I have a long ass fucking name. My full name, my first name is Johanna. And the reason I was named Johanna is because my grandfather, my dad's dad, was named John. And another thing that I just recently found out is that my grandfather, John, passed away 2 weeks before my dad got the call that I was available for adoption. So, in honoring my grandfather, whom I never got to meet, that is why I'm named Johanna. Now, my other name is Sigrid. That's Sigrid. Sigrid. Not secret or Seeger. It's Sigrid. And that is a name, it's a Swedish name, I think, or a Danish name, I'm not sure, that runs in our family. Okay, my aunt, she's a Sigrid. I'm like the 6th or 7th one. Okay, so I'm Johanna Sigrid, and then the Margarita, and then the Matrigene. I know, long ass fucking name. I know, it's insane in the membrane. But that was what was on my green card. So I don't know why they were calling me Margarita, but I remember that and getting like fucking pissed about that. I know, I was even kind of a drama queen diva even then at the ripe old age of 3. So I did have a green card. I was legit. I was fighting with my grandmother. She couldn't take care of me because she was an older parent as well. Older parents kind of run in our family. And so my dad put me in daycare while he was tarring all the roofs. And oh my God, I hated daycare. I hated it. And anyway, so while this was all happening, my dad got a phone call from a church, from an Episcopal church back in the Bay Area, because my dad had already, he wanted to find a church out there. He really liked the Bay Area and he wanted to go back to the Bay Area. So I got to go back to California, guys. I not to knock Arizona, but that was my home. The Bay Area was my home. I'm a California girl, And so I think I want to say, because I remember preschool, I remember going to preschool back in the Bay Area. So I want to say that I was 4 at this point. And my dad was starting at a church that was in Pinole, California, which is a suburb of the Bay Area. And I was going to preschool there. The really nice thing was my dad and my adopted mother were, the first time we were living in the Bay Area, we had become friends with an older couple that, also were going to the Episcopal church my dad was trying to become a priest at, but there wasn't any room for him. So he would just fill in every once in a while and get paid for those kind of Sundays or a baptism or a wedding somehow, but he wasn't making enough money just doing that. But at that church, we met a wonderful older couple that took us in. And we lived with them for a while, and she was one of my surrogate mothers, okay, because my adopted mother left when I was 3, and my dad had to work full time, and so we were in, so she ended up taking care of me a lot, this older couple, and she took care of me. She took me to preschool. I still remember her taking me to kindergarten. I remember coming home and she'd make my peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I loved her. I called her last name was Bonnie. So I called her Ma Bonnie. And I consider her one of my surrogate moms. I had a lot of surrogate moms. And that was just growing up in the church. And that is also why I am as outgoing, why I am as trusting of people more than usual, is because I lived in this, oh, sorry, my soda can. I lived in this very nice, sheltered bubble of love and support. And that was just amazing. That really was amazing. When my dad started at this church in the Bay Area, it was called, well, it still is. It's called Christ the Lord. It's still in Pinole, California. But his he had this wonderful secretary, and the cute thing was I called her Mrs. Secretary because, well, I didn't even know her name. I was already giving people nicknames. So she was Mrs. Secretary. And then everybody else in the church started calling her Mrs. Secretary too. And she was another one of my surrogate mothers. I ran into another wonderful woman who ended up taking care of me, because you have to realize, people, that Sunday is my dad's biggest day. My dad only had Monday off. He worked 6 days a week. And Sunday obviously was his biggest day, because not only did he have church service, there was only one church service at that time, but he had church service, he also had to do what is called sick communion, or some people refer to their pastoral calls. So it was people that couldn't go to church because, well, they were homesick, or, or whatever, he would, even if they were in the hospital, he would go take them communion in the hospital. And so he would be really busy all day Sunday. So there was people that had to, like, right after church, so my dad's parishioners, they would pick me up, or they would, take me home, I should say, and then my dad would pick me up in the evening. The one thing that my dad always did, and it was very, very important to him in being a single parent and being a parent to me, is he wanted me to always spend the night at my house, we were living in an apartment eventually after we moved out of that wonderful other couple's home. And that's really nice. He wanted to have that consistency. He said he wanted to make sure I woke up, I went to bed in the same bed every night, and I woke up in my bedroom every morning. And I think that's pretty damn impressive, that's really being an amazing parent. And my dad really was an amazing parent. Really, really was. We had a wonderful, it was hard, being a single parent, especially it was hard being a single parent of a little girl, because I had to learn to go to the bathroom, in public places by myself, while my dad's was standing out the door. And he used to get so angry that he, when I became a parent, that there were family restrooms. He's like, God, that's so much better, But back then, my dad, we didn't have that. And it was also so rare for my dad to be a single parent, in the 80s, to be a man and be a single father. That was kind of a rarity too. But it's just incredible how much he stepped up to the plate and how close we were. He was such a kind, loving father. He would do my hair. I remember there used to be this leave-in conditioner. I'm going to date myself. You guys can look it up, but it's called No More Tangles. And I remember, because I had really, long hair even back then, he would just do my hair. He would spray this and brush it. He would blow dry my hair. The other one of my favorite childhood memories of my dad is he would put on plays for me when I was little. He would get all my stuffed animals, and they would all be different characters. He would even do different voices for them, and he would act out little plays for me as my bedtime story. I still do have the rabbit. I can't remember what he called her, but she had a wonderful, he made her have this wonderful Southern accent, and it was just amazing. And I still have that rabbit, and for a while, when Aiden was little, he would sleep with that rabbit, because I told him that was my rabbit when I was a little baby. And it's just, and it was all just so amazing. Like our first Christmas in the Bay Area and this new church, all the parishioners, they surprised my dad. They just showed up at my dad's house or our apartment, and they had everything that we needed for Christmas. It was like, I don't remember it, unfortunately. I don't remember it. I've only heard stories, but I was blown away, and I thought it was the most amazing thing. They had a Christmas tree. They had lights. They had other decorations. They had a nativity scene for us. They had everything for us to welcome my dad and to have his first Christmas, because Christmas time is pretty busy for a clergyman. It really is. So it was all so wonderful, and it was all amazing, and it was great, right? It was wonderful. Well, then here I am. This is where we're going to end the story. All right, so we're going to end the first part of Johanna Banana's childhood. Can I get a drum roll, please? I don't even know how to do it. Okay, here I am, 8 years old. Okay. Middle of the night, I had I don't know, I had to get some water. Anyways, I got up to go get some water out of the kitchen. And I walk by the living room. There is a woman holding my dad on our couch. Yeah. I don't even know what time it is, but what the hell, right? Yeah, I know. I was just like, and I don't remember if I even said anything because I don't really remember anything after that. But I just remember being like, what the fuck? Like, I just remember it was like, it just shocked the fuck out of me. Like, I was just like, what the hell? And yeah. And so the next morning, my dad told me that he was in love with this woman named Barbara. And I just laughed. I do remember this part. I just remember just laughing. And I was like, what? You're in love? Like, I thought it was the silliest thing. Like, my dad's in love? Like, the fuck is this? Like, that's how I really felt. I was like, this has got to be a joke. I did not take it seriously at all. But I should have. I really should have. All right, guys. Well, that is my first podcast into my childhood. And thank you so much for listening. Yes, I know I tend to babble, but thank you so much for listening to my story. And we will continue the second part tomorrow. Have a good night, everyone.